Hey, how's it going? So in this video I'm going to show you guys how to change a bulb and a bulb socket in the car. If you have a headlight that's going out or it's just completely out, there could be two issues. And so for those of you who want to get straight into it, get straight to the work and just want to see me start doing hands-on stuff, I'll leave a skip to point in the description so you can just go ahead and click on that. But otherwise, yeah, basically for some backstory, the first issue is going to be just replacing a headlight bulb if your bulb went out. And that's a pretty straightforward one. And then the second issue is going to be if you replace the bulb and it still isn't fixed, that means you probably have something to do with your socket or your harness for the electrical connection for the actual bulb. And so I'm also going to show you how to change out the socket. This video is going to be very thorough, very redundant, so there's going to be a lot of information. If you want to get everything, you just watch it through. But without further ado, let's get straight into it.
So I have a couple of things here, and depending on what your issue is with your headlights, you may or may not need all of them. So starting off, I do have the actual headlight bulbs. So for the Toyota Camry, the 2005, I believe, and the one that's part of it, the ones that are similar to its generation, the low beam lights are the 9006 bulbs. And then for the high beams, they are the 9005. These will double as the DRLs, daytime running lights. And so the ones that I have here are actually Crystal Vision Ultra. They're kind of a xenon, halogen xenon wannabe. They're definitely brighter than the actual halogens. They're more of a white color, but they still are halogen quality and won't actually ever get to like HIDs or LEDs. I feel like the reason for my issue was caused by these headlights. I have no way to really verify, but nonetheless I'm going to fix the issue, and if it happens again, then more than likely it was because of these. And so if your problem is just a blown out bulb, then you'll just need a pair of replacement bulbs. It's ideal to just replace two at the same time so you have a matching intensity in bulb life. More than likely they were swapped out at the same time in their previous life, and so if one's out, the other one's probably going to go out soon. Whichever one, just get the right one for your high or low beam. And if changing the bulb doesn't fix the issue, then you probably have an issue with the harness, and so that's what we're going to use these for. So this right here is a wire stripping tool. This is the replacement socket, so you can't see it because it's covered up by the wire right there, but this is for the low beams, the 9006. They also have it 9005. This is the Dorman brand. I got it from O'Reilly Auto Parts. And so this is the high temperature version. So this is for specifically types of headlights or bulbs that draw more and tend to heat up the actual wires. So we'll see if this actually could prevent the issue from happening again. What we're going to do is we're going to take out the old socket and then splice on this new socket with the wires. And so to help do that, I have these heat shrink splice connects. This is rated 16 to 14 AWG, so the American wire gauge. This one is like, you could just pick it up Walmart, probably find them at, a hardware store anywhere in the electrical department. These are the heat shrinkable ones. You don't have to get the heat shrinkable ones. I just prefer them. There's also many other ways to splice wires. I also have, just in case, some heat shrink tubing to maybe insulate even over this, just to kind of double up. It may be overkill, may even not be necessary. We'll see as I get started. So one cool thing about this is it actually came in a pair of two. So since I'm going to have, the issue with one of the headlights, it may be overdue that the other one's going to go out. And so I can just replace both at one time. I believe this costs around like 14 bucks, so it's fairly easy. They're universal as well, so as long as your car runs on 9006 bulbs, this will work for all 9006 because it is the 9006 socket. So one thing about the actual bulbs themselves, you don't want to touch them with your finger, at least not the actual bulb part. Hold them from maybe the plastic housing or so. That way you don't get oil onto the actual bulb, because that could cause it to corrode quickly. We have oil on our fingers, so even if we don't see it, no matter how we clean it up. So that oil can get on the actual bulb and then heat up and cause it to bubble. It could cause it to shatter. There could be unnecessary issues. So if you're going to touch it, maybe put on some, latex gloves or something. So I've actually opened it up here, and let's go ahead and test the fit. This is the 9006 bulb, and this is the new socket. So they'd probably fit in something like that. Yeah, I think that's on. And so it just kind of clicks over the latch right there. Wait a minute, I don't think it's on yet. Let me make sure it's on. There you go. Okay, now it's on. So it just clicks over like a plastic latch right there. And yeah, so basically all I have to do now is just wire this. Obviously I'm not going to keep it on while I wire it, there's no need to do that. To take it off the same way you take it off for your stock bulbs. There we go. So just if you were curious, this is on the back of the actual sockets. It says fits 9006 high wattage bulbs. High wattage bulbs will damage OE sockets. Replace OE sockets when installing bulbs exceeding 55 to 65 watts. So since we're working on headlights, we're working on electrical things, let's take off the ground wire, or the ground connect for the battery. So when you're troubleshooting the issues with your headlights, there's two types of problems. One where it would just be the bulb, and then the other where it would be the harness. So this would be an example if you were just changing the bulb. So I'm going to come around. This is the passenger side. So you'll see over here, this is kind of the turn signal, I believe, or the parking light. This is the high beam. This is the low beam. So this one would be the high beams and daytime running lights. That one right there is the parking light. And this one right here would be the actual low beams. High beams, low beams. So to take out the actual headlight from the housing, it's fairly simple. So if you're looking at it like this, it's actually going to be plugged in like this. Basically, you're going to twist, and these are going to line up with holes to where you're unlocking the actual headlight, and you can pull it out. So in other words, if you were putting it back in, you would put it in this way, lock where these are no longer exposed, and you wouldn't be able to pull it out. So from the side, it'd be twist, pull out. So like I said, you would kind of come up behind it, you'd twist, and then pull it out. And then from there you can actually see like the wiring and stuff. And so if this was your issue, all you do now is just take this out of its socket and then replace the bulb. I would just take one of these, replacement bulb, set it aside, come over here. Let's see if I can see behind it. Okay, so there'll be like a little push to release. So right here, I'll push in right here, and then I can actually pull the bulb out. I'm kind of doing this upside down just so that I can get a good camera angle, but yeah, take that one out, put it to the side, and then bring in the new one, plug it in under the same orientation, and you hear it click, and then you just put it back in. You lock it into place and it won't come out. And that would be it basically if you were just changing the bulb. But if your harness actually had a problem, that's when we'd come over here and do this instead. So on this side, the driver's side, let me go ahead and grab the actual headlight first, rotate, pull it out, and then I can show you. So over here, you'll actually see that when I take out the bulb, we'll see a lot of corrosion on the inside. It looks melted, like fried. And then if I can bring this a little closer, that is the socket. So that's probably the source of your problem. If you have a flickering light that's only going out, sometimes you hit it and it'll come back on, but only momentarily. So that's where you have an issue with the socket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it from the factory wiring, and I'm going to actually splice it to the new connector socket that is the high temp socket. And so this won't actually work at all anymore. It's fried and melted, probably dangerous, corroded. Could happen for a number of reasons. I'm guessing in this one I was using maybe like a higher draw bulb, higher wattage, so it maybe fried it. Could also be because of corrosion, rust, broken seals, stuff like that. So the only real issue that I'm probably going to face here, I feel like, is that I can only pull out the socket so much. I want to cut enough of the wire where I still have some exposure and I can connect it. Maybe I'll peel back this little protective layer of insulation just a bit. It'll only come out so much. But yeah, this is the scariest part. This is the part I'm always worried about doing. But we're going to have to take the wire cutters and actually cut the factory wiring. So we're going to cut off the ground and the power so we can get rid of this old dust. Oh, so cut that off. I left as much wire as I can for myself. I'm going to peel this back a little more so I can expose some more wire. And then I'm going to actually use the strippers to kind of strip off some of that plastic insulation on the wires, so that way I can expose them a little more, put them into the butt splices, and then crimp them and basically heat shrink the new socket on. Alright, let's see. Cut this back a little more. Hopefully, or avoiding to cut the actual wires themselves. So I'm gonna have to kind of undo it. Let's see. So we're gonna take the cutters. I'm gonna put it in the 14 gauge. So it's looking like this is more like a 16 than 14, but either way it's okay because the connectors I got was for 14, 16. So yeah, I'm gonna go 16 for these ones. Looks like it had some tape melted onto it or something. Okay, so now I got some wire exposed. Now I can actually take the butt end of the other connectors and put those on. Maybe try to separate these a little bit. Alright, I think I got a little bit of better lighting going on here. But so while I'm here, I'm just going to go ahead and get this kind of ready. This is rated 16 to 14 gauge. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look on the actual strippers, and then I'll find this is 18, 16, 14, 12, 10, 8. So I'm going to go for 14. I'm going to put it in between here. I'm going to close and then peel off. And so both of these already have kind of like pre-cut incisions onto like where you should start off from. And these, the butt connectors, they actually have a little description. So it says to cut off 3/8 of an inch from the actual wire. So 3/8 of an inch off here. Put it inside the actual butt splice, and then crimp down, and it'll kind of show you where on the actual description. Crimp down where the metal parts. So what it does is basically the two metal parts will connect. When they do connect, they're going to be kind of clamped down on, and then after that we can use the heat shrink part to kind of just make a seal. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on that. So 14 is what I want to go for. Okay, and just to make sure, I want to check this actual piece that I cut off, that there's no copper wire in there that I might have accidentally stripped. If that does happen, it's not the end of the world, but it'll just, you know, if you cut out a lot, then it might affect your connection, so that's why that's important. So now for the black, and so I believe the wire used for the actual headlights in the Camry is there we go, 14 gauge. Okay, so that's what we got right there. So what I'm going to do is take one of these, put it in there. Oh, you know what? Yeah. So I'm going to use a glove to touch the actual wire. So essentially, to connect these, we'd take one of the butt connectors, and then we'd go ahead and put it in right here. And then we'd push it in most of the way. We'd crimp down on this side, put in the other connector from the car in this way, crimp down on that side, and then use the heat shrink. So now that I have the wiring and the actual connector, I have it pushed in, you know, so the insulation kind of matches up, or blocks off as far as I'm in. Basically, I'm kind of like this much in where it's just exposed wire. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my actual wire cutters to, on the crimp side, so this is where the blue gauge wire kind of matches up, so I'll use that part to crimp. I'm just going to kind of crimp on the center. Okay. So I got that crimped down on one end, and so now I'd basically do the same from the car side wire, putting it in here. So let's see. This is for red. There we go. So I could just crimp that on. And this is for black. Fit in quite nicely. Oh. The only thing that sucks is that they're so close together. So just to give you a clear look, I ended up taking out the battery so I have a nice little area to work in instead. You may or may not need to do that. You might be able to access it easier, but I just found it like I don't want to kind of barely do it on the edge. I wanted space to work and do it right. If you don't know how to take out the battery, I do have a video on how to replace the battery, which shows you how to take it out. So it's pretty simple and straightforward. It took me like 5 minutes to do. So it wasn't the best looking heat shrink job. You know, it is kind of dangerous using an open fire, having a lighter. If you have a heat gun, I'd recommend maybe you can use that instead. It'd be safer. And then also just be careful if you are using a lighter to avoid just melting the wiring itself, or getting close to the electrical tape or this plastic right here, the protective plastic. You might end up burning that off too. But yeah, so a heat gun if you have it. Otherwise, be careful, very careful with the lighter. But basically, once that's done, just go ahead and put everything back, and then you can plug in the new bulb to this socket, and you can give it a start. And make sure to just be careful for any loose connections. Be careful. I mean, fires could start if you didn't do it right. And make sure you had ground to ground, red to red, stuff like that. So now we put the battery back in, and I have this kind of just shown here so you guys can see this is the socket. The socket was replaced, and so now we're gonna go ahead and turn it on and make sure it lights up. Okay, go ahead. All right, and as you guys can see, the socket is replaced, the light is working, and then we also have our other light here. So if you just had a bulb issue, just swap it out. If you had the socket issue, just get the spare parts, swap it out. Maybe you'll do a better job on the heat shrink than I did. So now maybe for presentation, I'll probably wrap this up in electrical tape or something so it's a little nicer. Okay, you can turn off the lights. I hope that video helps you out. You can change your bulb, fix your bulb so you don't get pulled over, get a fix-it ticket, whatever. I mean, if I was able to do it, you should be able to do it too. Anyway, if you like the video, give a thumbs up, subscribe. If not, let me know in the comments what you'd like to see next time.
There's a few things that I would have done a little better, looking back at it. I definitely wouldn't have used a lighter, would have used a heat gun. I'd prefer one of those. Taking the battery out is a better idea if you want space to work. In terms of cleanliness or professionalism, I would say also the wires originally, they were twisted together, and so that was to help reduce interference. When I did install the replacement socket, I didn't twist those wires together. I realized that after the video. So what I'm talking about is, for example, let's say I got some just charging cables here, so I'll show you this way. I just had them kind of loose fitting like this and dangling out, so they would just be like this. What you'd want to do is instead twist them this way. So that way, obviously, they look cleaner this way, but the other thing too is that you have one current going up, one current coming down, and so those are going to both have different types of electromagnetic flux, and so that could cause interference with other electrical systems in the car. By twisting them, you negate this effect, but that's another thing that I would have changed. So maybe when you do yours, you can change that for the replacement and the repair. I didn't do this perfectly. This is my first time doing anything like this. I made a few mistakes, but I kept them in there and as bloopers. So you guys can check out those bloopers so that you can avoid those mistakes. And check those out if those are things that you want to make sure you avoid. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
There's also many other ways to splice wires rather than just the butt plugs. These are heat. I'm sorry. So I'm gonna crimp that one down. I use the cutters like an idiot. So yeah, don't make that mistake. So now we put the engine back in. The engine. But yeah, also don't let it dangle like that because this bulb gets really hot. Look what I just did. I just melted the plastic right there. Luckily, this isn't the bulb that I'm going to be using, so I'll swap that one out. Thanks for watching, guys.